We have Joe McGraw in the studio today, and Joe, I think the easiest way for us to start is to have you give a few words about yourself and introduce yourself to the voters.
Sure. My name is Joe McGraw. I'm a retired judge. I put in over 20 years as a circuit judge up in Rockford. And my wife and I raised 5 kids. We got a couple grandkids. Grew up in a blue-collar environment and, went to law school, became a prosecutor and private practice, county board, and then judge, and now running for Congress.
And then you talk about your history as a judge. You spent over 2 decades on the bench, retired 3 months ago, or around 3 months ago.
No, a year ago. It was 2003.
Oh, excuse me.
That's okay.
2003.
Yeah.
You became the Republican nominee back in March. When exactly was it that you felt it was time for you to run for office?
Well, when you're a judge, you serve the people in so many different ways. We had a human trafficking court. We dealt with substance abuse, handled everything from a death penalty case to a child custody case when I was on the bench. And so once you've done what you can and tackled it from many different directions, I was also chairman of the Conference of Chief Judges for the entire state of Illinois. So I looked around and I thought I'd done my time there, and it was time to step back and take a broader look, and instead of just the judiciary, looking at the country as a whole, the state as a whole, and that's when I decided to run.
And then you'll be running against incumbent Eric Sorensen.
Yes.
When you look at it, what would you say you feel is his biggest shortcoming in his 2 years that he's been in office, and what would you have done differently?
Well, he wants to posture himself as a moderate, bipartisan kind of guy, but that's not the case. The facts show otherwise. And as a judge, I deal with facts. He's voted with Pelosi about 95% of the time, and Biden and Harris just a little bit less than that. And he is essentially a puppet for them, representing their agenda here in the 17th rather than representing the values of the 17th District in Washington.
How do you've touched on it a little bit in the past answer. How does your history, being a judge, being a prosecutor, all your experience, how will that help you and guide you once you are in office, if given the chance?
Well, it gives me a lot of real life experience, not just theoretical experience. I'm endorsed by all the sheriffs, a number of chiefs of police, because they know I'll be tough on crime. I'll enforce the law, including the immigration laws that are not being followed right now. They know I'll be tough on securing the border. Right now I see so many drugs and other things, crime, fentanyl coming across the border. So I think the most important thing about my background is being, as a judge, being a good fact finder, the ability to listen carefully. Listening isn't just waiting to speak. You're actually concentrating on what's being told to you without thinking about the next case or the last case. You're there to find the facts, evaluate the testimony and the witnesses, apply the law, and then you have to make a decision. You can't vote present as a judge. And so without fear of, it's not a popularity contest, the buck stops with you, but you've got to make those tough decisions. When I get to DC, I'll use that same thoughtful, deliberative decision-making skills. I'm also a trained mediator and a trained arbitrator. I'll make some decisions in DC.
Put it to use.
Absolutely.
4 of the last 5 representatives that are in this district have been Democrats, going all the way back until I know it was like 1983. What makes you feel that you can change that trend? What makes you feel like you're the guy?
Well, everything's changed. A lot of people have been skeptical about that, brought that up, like, well, it's a D+2 district, they say, and, they cite that history that you've cited, Joe. But everything's changing, and I think people are really evaluating now the roles that the parties play, and stereotypical views about the Democratic Party being the party of the working man and so forth they don't hold water anymore. You know, because of the horrible inflation that we're all experiencing. And I was talking to some folks the other day, and you know, they said, well, we see the inflation's coming down. I said, let me know when the prices start coming down. That's the real test. Families are spending $1,000 more a month just to, you know, buy necessaries. So the working men and women, the people that are supporting their families, now have experienced runaway inflation because of government spending. They have high taxes, and the taxes are just going to get higher as Kamala Harris has pledged to repeal the Trump-era tax cuts on individuals and on corporations. It's going to make jobs harder to get. Sure, there are plenty of jobs, Joe, but they're part-time jobs, don't have any benefits. You can't support a family on that. You know, everyone's sprinting just to keep up. And the Democrats have had the helm for 4 years. Eric Sorensen's rubber stamped their approach. And so they're reevaluating whether or not that's the party that really represents them.
And as you're talking about looking out for the community, I know one of your biggest stances is restoring order at the border.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it something that you're so passionate about, and how is it that it could impact residents that are in this area?
Well, it has impacted residents in this area. You can talk to any of the coroners in the 14 counties here in the district. All of them had fentanyl overdoses. When I did community forums or town hall meetings, I would always ask, is there anybody here who's a close friend or family member, someone they know, who's been affected by fentanyl? And in every single case, in every single county, hands go up. 80% of the fentanyl, first of all, the precursors are manufactured by communist China. They come into our country across the open southern border, 80%, and then they're shipped northward, trafficked along with humans. I also had a human trafficking court that I had in Rockford, the only one outside of Cook County. So I actually had individuals on my probation that died as a result of fentanyl overdoses. And I've talked to all the sheriffs, chiefs of police, and every community now is essentially a border community.
Got it. Sorry to hear about your friend that you were mentioning a second ago.
Yeah, it was someone on probation, and if you've got a minute, I'll tell you this story. There's this young lady who got clean from opioid addiction, and she came back, and I put her on a very intensive form of probation, including drug treatment and mental health, therapy, and so forth. And she became clean and sober, and her life totally changed. Her countenance was different, and she smiled. There's light in her eyes. Over time, she'd come to court every week or so, and I'd ask her what she's learning, keep that accountability level high. Eventually, one day she brings this guy to court with her, and so I'm curious because, I'm thinking, what kind of peer is this, and what will the influence be? But he'd been clean and sober 10 years. To make a long story short, they ended up getting married, and she was expecting, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is one of those happy endings. And then last year, she wasn't in court one day, and I asked my bailiff, where is she? Because she was always there, she just wasn't on time, usually. And he found out that she had died of a fentanyl overdose. And she was pregnant with a child at the time who also died as a result of her fentanyl overdose. So I've seen the mothers and fathers of people that are struggling with that. I've seen the victims of crime caused by that, and it's no longer an abstraction. It's no longer statistics. They're real lives, real people that they're afraid. They're afraid of the chaos. They're afraid of the violence. They're afraid of the drugs, the lack of law and order in our country, and the illegals are being given a pass. This is a sanctuary state, and we've had Illinois, I think, is 6th in the nation fentanyl overdoses. So this is not something that's under control, and Eric Sorensen's turned a blind eye with his open border attitude.
Now we understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
Now, labor workers make up a vital part of our community,
yeah,
manning our factories, packing
Sure.
produce, paving streets,
Sure.
things of that nature. How will you represent them? How will you go about representing that community?
well, it's very second nature to me because, I grew up my dad had a small business with his uncles. Actually, he made horseshoes for harness racers and thoroughbreds. And so I grew up around the shop, doing all the jobs, and eventually making the shoes. I was standing arm's length from a blast furnace with a pair of tongs and reaching in and getting the steel, putting it on the anvil and turning it into a shoe. And so, working hard, getting calluses on your hands and sweating for a paycheck. That was how I grew up. And after college, I worked in a couple foundries around in Lake Michigan, non-ferrous foundries, and worked in some steel mills as well. And so I know what it's like to work. I know I've spent time with people that work. This is, a real life, litmus test, if you will, that tells us what our background is and what we value. And the people in the district connect with that. They want to just put enough money aside to maybe buy a home. That's been put out of reach now, or maybe get some money put aside for their kids' education. That's been stalled right now. And their jobs are going away. That's a great concern. Our trade policies are not effective in keeping good paying jobs here. And so it's a composition of things that our government's policies in so many areas have made it harder and harder and harder for working men and women to make ends meet and survive. And they just want to prosper and be left alone. And when I talk to them, whether they're union workers, whether they're not union workers, they're all examining whether or not the Democratic Party really has their best interests at heart in light of what's happened, and they're concluding that it doesn't, and that Eric Sorensen is just a puppet for the administration.
Another one of voters' largest concerns as we head into the election season, reproductive rights.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the first time that voters will have the chance to select a candidate since Roe v. Wade was overturned in June 2022.
Mm-hmm.
What are your stances on abortion and your thoughts on the issue in general?
Sure. As a judge, I always supported the rule of law, whether I agreed or disagreed with it. Roe is criticized by many on the right and the left for its flawed reasoning and was eventually overturned by the Dobbs case. Dobbs is interesting in that it defederalizes the abortion issue. It leaves it to the states to decide how each of the 50 states will govern with regard to abortion. And we've seen a wide variety of approaches so far, from extremely conservative to like Illinois, where abortion is available up through the 9th month. And so there really are no restrictions. In fact, Illinois has gone up with the amount of abortions that are being done since the Dobbs decision. So it's not a matter for Congress, it's not a matter for the federal government anymore. And if I was asked to support a national abortion ban or something like that, I would vote against it. This is a states' rights issue now for those closest to their legislators, those in the state where they live, to elect their state reps and state senators and so forth, and then decide for themselves what they want the rule of law to be in their states on abortion.
It's almost like the cat's out of the bag. You can't put it back into the nation's hands overall.
Well, it's like so many things. Our government doesn't do a lot of things well, and one size fits all usually doesn't fit anybody. And reversing Roe and the Dobbs decision, it didn't prevent anybody from getting an abortion. It didn't affect anyone's right to get an abortion. It simply said this is not a federal issue. This is a states' rights issue, and let the people in the states elect those who represent their view. And I subscribe to that 100%.
Got it. What's the best way that people can keep up with you and your campaign as we head into these next couple of months?
Yeah, you can go to judgejoeforcongress.com. That's our website, and check us out on social media, Facebook and X. We're posting all the time, and we're keeping up a real hectic schedule. We put almost 50,000 miles on the vehicles now, crisscrossing the district, 14 counties. But it's been so valuable, Joe, because it allows me to speak to people face to face, hear from them, without any filters, without any, party line. I'm going to Washington I'm running as a Republican, but I'm going there to represent the people of the 17th, so that if the Republicans are wrong, I'm not going to join ranks with the Republican. If the Democrats are right, we'll work with them. And so I care about what's right for the people, their basic human rights, their fundamental rights, their rights protected by the U.S. Constitution. And, so that's what will be the hallmark, so to speak, of both my campaign and when I'm in Congress. So, yeah, check us out on social media, Judge Joe for Congress, and also check us out at judgejoeforcongress.com.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Always a pleasure.
Always.
Mm-hmm.